after we realized how poorly the salesmen were treating the customers, and the customers are the bosses, we decided to switch our tactic and we get rid of the sales team, and we only had customer service people that were paid a salary to ensure the customer is satisfied the entire process. And we even put in many metrics to hold them accountable, including the customer service manager would call the customer a week after the vehicle delivered and ask them about their experience and so forth. We use that in our training process as well. So yes, it was very, very competitive. But what we used, as I said previously, was the technology to text the customer, to communicate with our team better. We use Ring Central.
From Caribbean Ideas in Trinidad and Tobago, this is UpTick, a part of the Caribbean Innovation Content Network. UpTick is a show that brings you the stories of Caribbean entrepreneurs and corporate innovators that are building the next generation of great companies. These are the stories you don't typically hear of how these leaders are working to build brands and businesses that can not only impact the Caribbean world, but also have an impact on the global business stage. Their stories will move you, inspire you, push you to take action, and perhaps spark your next big idea. I'm your host, Chike Farrell. All right, well, this is Chike Farrell here for another episode of the UpTick podcast, where we feature Caribbean innovators live, whether entrepreneurs or corporate innovators or anybody who's really trying to fly the Caribbean flag and push things forward and represent the Caribbean on a global stage. And season 2 has been really interesting because we've been exploring themes around purpose and perseverance and pivoting or evolution. And it's been a fascinating season as we've gone along. And I'm really excited today to welcome Jay Warde. So welcome, Jay. Really excited to have you on the podcast.
Well, thank you, Chike. Thank you for having me. And I look forward to speaking with you as well.
Yeah, well, this is great. I think you've done some really interesting things, a really good example of, as I said, representing the Caribbean flag and represent the Caribbean on a global stage. Now, before we jump in, I want to recognize the sponsor for today's episode, Guardian Life of the Caribbean. They have a solution to a need that many organizations have, which is called Keyman Insurance. When you think about it, as an entrepreneur or someone who's driving a fast-growing business, really, the foundation of your success is your people. Your great people become an invaluable resource to the business, and they really push your organization forward. Now, without these key people, your business might still exist, sure, but it most likely will not be as innovative and as hard-charging and forward-thinking as before. And you see, if this happens, particularly in unexpected circumstances where critical illness or death occurs, then Guardian Life of the Caribbean has introduced Keyman Insurance as a solution to this need. You see, Keyman Insurance is a policy that a business can take out to ensure their most valuable employees. You can think of it as life and critical illness cover for those who are really crucial to your company's success. And that could be the CEO, that could be your top sales guy or gal, this could be someone with a really specialist skill set. And if any of these people were to, God forbid, suddenly die or fall ill, a Keyman Insurance policy can protect your business against some of the financial repercussions. It pays out a lump sum directly to the business, and this can be used to cover the cost of any profit losses, replacement staff, or other scenarios that you will kind of find yourself jumping into. So it can really help keep you afloat during a really difficult time. And for some organizations, this could be the difference between your survival or closure. It perhaps is even more important to look at investing in Keyman cover when you're relatively small or a new company, or when you're in the midst of a growth trust that's really driven by a particular person or persons, because this could be when you're most reliant on your staff, and losing a key member could really be the difference between failure or success. And you might also find that in some cases, your bank might ask you to have Keyman Insurance if you're applying for a loan. So this really addresses an important need. So I want you to check it out, Keyman Insurance from Guardian Life. For more information, log on to myguardiangroup.com. Now, let's jump into the show. So tell us about your company, tell us the name, tell us how long you've been doing it and what your company focuses on.
Our company is called Onassis Auto Transportation. That's Onassis Auto Transportation. And it's a automobile transportation company. So most people do not know that in America, tens of millions of vehicles are transported on trucks annually, whether this be a wholesale car dealer selling to an individual, or whether it be baby boomers, snowbirds as they are called, traveling from the cold states, like the tri-state to Florida, or the tri-state to California to escape the weather. So we would hook somebody up with a trucker. So for example, Chike, so say you're in Seattle and you want your Rolls Royce to be transported to New York. You would go online and Google our company, and you go online and get a quote. It text to your phone, or you can email us, you can call us, and you would tell us the date you want your vehicle to be picked up or delivered, and we will provide you with the options. But basically, we'll come in front of your door. After inspecting your car, we'll put your car on a truck or inside the truck. That's for an enclosed. And then the driver will truck it down to New York or California or anywhere in the States.
So you're kind of in finance and logistics, which is kind of an interesting kind of, combination of things to kind of be working on. So what were some of the challenges for you, as you said, kind of like initially, I think I'm always kind of curious about that in terms of kind of like establishing your reputation and kind of garnering respect that you kind of had to overcome. And tell me a little bit about some of the ways that you were able to kind of grow and develop, across the course of that journey.
Definitely. Some of the challenges is that there's a big cultural difference. So I was born in Guyana, which is a British colony. I moved to America, which is from the British point of view, a rebellious former colony. My wife is from St. Lucia, so that's a former French colony. I was born in a low-income community that, in my opinion, had a lot of negative social, economic stuff going on. And I was able to work my way up to a very successful lifestyle and house and so forth in Florida and driving Mercedes and that kind of stuff. So it was very challenging. One of the challenges was the perception of all Blacks. That was a problem. So what do I mean by that? I mean that, in my opinion, after living in America for over 15 years from different coasts, the African American who their parents and their grandparents were born in America versus the Africans who are descendants of Caribbean people, Trinidad people, Guyanese people, Jamaicans, so forth. These are Jay-Z's, Busta Rhymes, the Marleys, so forth, Biggie Smalls. They behave and they act. In my opinion, I can see a big difference in how they carry themselves. And the problem was me going into that culture. The people, the Italians, the Germans, these type of people, when they look at us, they cannot tell an American Black from a Caribbean Black from an African Black. So they treat all of us the same. How did this come into play? Let me give an example. I would tell somebody I'm going to be at a place at this time at 1 p.m. and 100% I'm going to be there at least 30 minutes before. However, I would get this reaction if there's a miscommunication with the time and someone err, or if someone come there 10 to or quarter to 1, and then they think they're going to be early. I was there like half an hour earlier. So I keep getting the different comments referencing that Black people are always late, the CP time. So that is one example of the negative stereotype that I had to overcome.
Right. You mean, so as you were kind of like progressing within the organization, there were stereotypes that you kind of had to battle against and kind of demonstrate some difference.
I want to say a big one was I am 6'5". I'm 240 pounds. I'm a big guy. I have broad shoulders. I'm an accountant, so I'm very serious. So people believe that all of us settle disputes physically or with violence. So me being very big, people used to be very, they were intimidated because they fear I am one of these athletes who can't resolve problems in a legal manner.
Interesting, because you kind of talked about growing up in Workmanville, and you said, hey, it was maybe a lower income area, and I was just curious, like to get to the things where you went to really good schools. What was that like?
Great question. Thanks for asking that. So it was definitely a struggle to get to where I am today, and so this is how our neighborhood, our community was. We did not have playgrounds. We did not have parks and soccer balls and basketballs and these type of things for the kids to cultivate discipline or develop their skills because of the lack of infrastructure or even human capital, counselors or mentors in the community. So that's where I grew up. And putting food on most people's table or clothing on their backs, that was a struggle. And I used to walk to primary school, Stella Maris, this is outside of my community. And the kids that were going there, I was going to school with the president's grandson, Chedi Jagan Jr. I was going to school with generals in the army, their sons. I was going to school with Shiv Narayan Chandrapal and Sarwan and these caliber of people who they had the resources. They used to come to school with cars. They drove into the driveway and they got picked up back for lunch and the whole nine while we walking. We did not have the textbooks, the required reading materials or compasses or painting materials that we needed to learn better or develop the different stages. So those were the obstacles. And I remember in studying for CXC in high school, they would give you homework and they would reference the books. Check out this book, this chapter, bring the homework. But of course, we have no books. Or if you need 10 books, we had two of the 10. Okay, so it was like growing up in a low income community. So through the years, I was able to excel academically as well as in sports and develop real discipline. But the problem was still at 20 years old, 19 years old, I had no job that I could go in to make use of my qualifications, O levels, A levels, CAT, that's accounting qualifications, and the ACC I was studying. So here I am, a young black guy from a low income community that struggle and go through a hard process to develop myself, my skills. And as a young adult with ACCA qualifications, I'm applying for jobs and they're telling me, hey, we don't have jobs for you. And the few that would look at me, they say, hey, you're overqualified on paper with no experience.
Yeah, that's kind of like one of those classic, Caribbean problems where we have, tons of qualified young people sometimes coming out and they can't get jobs or there aren't those opportunities. So I guess from there, I know you sort of shortly after that, when you were around 23, migrated to the US. So what was that like? And, what was that experience like for you? Kind of like adaptation to this whole new environment?
It was definitely life changing. Let me give you an example. In Guyana at the time, we would play basketball for many months, and the trophy we would receive as an award for first place, or me, the MVP, the trophy was about 12 inches high. That's it. Okay. In America, I had nephews in Brooklyn, New York, 16-year-olds, 17-year-olds. They're doing summer leagues for a month. And when they win a competition, the trophies are 6 foot tall. Okay. 6 foot tall. I played amateur leagues in the States, and the way the resources they're given for talented people at any level in America is mind-boggling. So it was definitely a cultural shock for me, getting adjusted to working at American companies like Panasonic and State Farm and so forth. But it was definitely life-changing in a positive way. And I owe going to the States and all the wonderful experience for making me into the man I am today.
So now you're in the States, you're in New Jersey, and you kind of start getting opportunities at some, pretty well-known companies. But I guess you kind of get your bigger break in terms of the ability to kind of showcase your capabilities and so on at a company called Telebrands, right? So what were you doing for Telebrands initially, when you started, and then kind of how did that progress over time?
Great. Awesome. Definitely. So at Telebrands, where I worked for 10 years, initially when I was hired, it was to do accounting. That's it. Basic accounting. I would do accounts payables, accounts receivables. I would make a few journal entries, regular accounting stuff. Fortunately or unfortunately, Well, unfortunately for the company at the time, the company was now emerging from bankruptcy and after doing 80 million the prior year. So out of bankruptcy, no one would extend them credit. Their records are a mess. They have to launch new products. They have to go and rebuild relationships that are important for the industry they're in. And here I am, 6 months into being a new migrant. I'm put in a position where if someone in marketing need assistance, they're like, hey, Jay, can you assist us with this? If someone in logistics need assistance, they're asking me for assistance. And my boss, who was, I believe he still is, the CFO, we had a group of experienced people that understand the retail business, the logistics, finance, and so forth. And I had the pleasure of wearing multiple hats over the 10 years, whether it be finance or the supervisor of logistics, or working with products directly. So it was an amazing experience.
You then made a pretty interesting leap, right? From, kind of being on the corporate innovation side and growing with a company and building there to, moving from New York to Florida without necessarily having it all figured out right as you did it, and then ending up in the entrepreneurial space. So tell me about that move and that decision and, what led you to swap New York for South Florida, other than, of course, great weather and and all the other things. But tell me a little bit more about that.
So Chike, at Telebrands, I have three kids. And the two older kids, they were born when I was employed at Telebrands. Okay, and my wife saw the best doctor in New Jersey. They stayed at the best hospital. When she gave birth, she had a room like Beyonce. I kid you not, she had a room like Beyonce. It was amazing. I had a bed to sleep next to her. When she gave birth, afterward, they took care of both of my kids. And I did not come out of pocket more than $1,000. Okay. And that's probably like $80,000 of expenses. And I did not come out of pocket $1,000. I also had knee surgery done with the New York. The same doctor that does surgery for the New York Knicks guys did surgery on my meniscus and my ACL. And again, did not come out of pocket and got the best treatment money could buy. So from leaving a comfortable job that took care that the check arrived 2 times a month in my bank account, direct deposit, knowing that any healthcare related issues are taken care of, having my Saturday and Sundays off and so forth. From switching that to go into the entrepreneur life, it was a big, big jump and a move. But the reason that I decided after discussing with my wife to move there is because we have these big goals and dreams. And we believe that the changing our environment to a new environment, South Florida, with new pastures and uncharted territory for us and different cultures that's different from the Caribbean culture and the Italians and the Spanish people and so forth. We believe that and with Florida being the hub that it is and the amount of human capital that's there, all the major firms, the tech firms or law firms or accounting firms or so forth have offices in South Florida. I've worked with Pricewaterhouse. I've worked with other big international law firms out there. So they have a good business hub. It's very multicultural and different from the narrow culture I was exposed to at the time. And most importantly, our dreams of me and my wife, we had big dreams and big goals of buying big homes and big cars and traveling the world and so forth. And that's the only way we thought making that leap, one quantum leap and making one jump. We thought that was the best way to do it. And we never looked back, and it's been awesome.
So you kind of ended up into where you kind of went entrepreneurially in kind of a unique way, right? So tell me a little bit about that, because you had challenges transporting your car from New Jersey to Florida, and you're like, wait a minute, there's got to be a better way. So tell me a little bit about the insight that you had as you were going through that experience.
Definitely. So just some context, Chike. So what happened is I worked with the biggest trucking company in America. It's called C.H. Robinson. So I worked with them. I was the rep for them for over 5 years. I worked with freight forwarders. These are big containers, take big freight, some look like warships that took containers to and from the Orient, China, and what have you, and brought it to the States, West Coast, East Coast. So I worked with different segments of transportation. So I know what a good customer experience supposed to look like. When my wife and I was transporting our two vehicles at a time, and we had home furniture as well, TV, beds, what have you. The experience was horrible. It was horrible. The first person we talked to told us they're the trucker. Then we found out that they're a lead provider, a marketer. Nothing wrong with a lead provider, but they weren't transparent. They were very sleazy. The second person we talked to, we thought it was the trucker because they told us that they took $200 deposit from us. It turned out that that was a broker. That was a middleman. Then the third person we spoke to, that was the dispatcher of the trucker, and they already had our vehicle. The customer service was non-existent. They wouldn't call us back. They leave the vehicle late. So it was very, very bad experience. So that prompted me to do some research. After I reached Florida, I called around, I spoke to people directly, I did some online research, and then I went and interviewed for several companies to see what the process is like. And I eventually went and consult with one of them for several months before deciding to go into business for myself.
Got it. So what was your thinking? You were thinking, hey, I'm going to kind of like get a view of how it works from the inside, or you were kind of just building your understanding of the space before deciding that you wanted to go, or did you sort of know, or did you kind of fall into it, as you were kind of going through the experience of talking to people and, starting to consult, and then you just felt like, no, I have to go do this?
So to step back for a minute, when I was moving to Florida, I had been in America for 10 years. I worked at many different companies. Telebrands, State Farm was a side thing I did over time, Panasonic. I also did a lot of little hustles here or there, regular stuff, nothing big. I also stopped being a prima donna. I was just looking to make money to maintain the lifestyle that me and my wife got accustomed to. And I know that I had at this point, not just the theory of business and doing little businesses, little hustles. I know I actually went through the process from building a company from $80 million to $600 million. I know, I have a deep understanding of how hard, how challenging, the amount of anxiety and the amount of emotions and all that's involved in building and maintain a company. So when I went to Florida, I was using my skills. I developed some very good high performance skills that I know it was money in the bank. I knew logistics, I knew accounting, I knew finance, I knew a lot of different things. And I also looked good in a suit. I understood being on time. I understood at the time when I say I'm going to do something, I need to do it. So I understood the culture of the corporate. I was a full-fledged high performer at that point. So when I went to Florida, I wasn't thinking I want to own my own company and be CEO. And I was just thinking, how do I make money to pay the bills? That's it. I had 2 cars. I have 2 kids. I have a wife. We live in South Florida. It's expensive. We're living. We're traveling. So I needed money. So I went to consult. And at this point, I consulted with any type of company, supermarkets, you name it, that needed the skills that I had. But I make sure I told them I do not want to be an employee. I was offered jobs. I told them, hey, I don't want to be an employee. Just let's talk about it, and we can pay me a consultant fee based on me achieving agreed upon results. So whilst doing that and having the experience I had with the trucking company transporting my car, I decided to look more into the auto transportation business. And then after doing research on the line and speaking to people on the phone, I actually went and talked to people. I told them, hey, I want to interview. And then when I started talking about their business, and I asked them if I could help them, and we started talking about ways I can help them. So this one company, we agreed on some metrics and some outcomes, and I consulted with them for several months before deciding to open my own transportation company.
That's really great because it's a great way to kind of learn, the space that you're going to ultimately go into in a really interesting sort of hands-on way, which would really kind of help you, understand the dynamics of the business and so on. So then how did you kind of, start building out your experience within the area of logistics? Because, on the one hand, finance and accounting is pretty well understood in some respects, but not everybody then kind of blends that with sort of a logistics side. And that obviously had a pretty big impact on your eventual transition into entrepreneurship. So how did you build those muscles and those capabilities over the course of time?
I would say that I have always had those capabilities and abilities inside of me. I would say that my grandmother and my mom and the church community and the community, the auntie next door and the uncle next door who would guide you and so forth. I would think that that environment, the positive of the social dynamics we grew up in, assisted me develop those things. And then the sports, I was a super athlete. A day would not pass without me building my discipline and so forth from sports. And in sports, playing basketball, I was captain of teams and so forth. And I was being captain of team while studying for CXE and O levels and CAT. And I did mathematics and I did economics and I did accounting and so forth. So I always could have think critically about anything, and I could have wrapped my hands around or my mind around a big project. And I had the staying power and the stamina from basketball and the life challenges growing up. So I learned any big problem, I could start it and stick with it and ask questions and get mentors and ask people who did it before. And today there's this thing called Google. It's pretty neat.
That's right. You could learn it all. So no, that's powerful because, you really have to, in some cases, as I said, you think about this area of logistics, which is really about breaking problems down in many ways to smaller constituent components. And but what I kind of take away from that is that, you feel like a lot of your experiences, it wasn't so much about learning any specific thing to get there, but having sort of lots of influences along the way. And I want to give another shout out to Guardian Life of the Caribbean, our sponsor for today's episode, and talk a little bit about another solution that they provide, which is really their pension solution, which is a really interesting thing because I've actually had more employees recently start coming and asking about what the company can do for them in terms of, helping them to advance their retirement and other goals. And pensions can be a way that as an employer, you can kind of help to, set up your employees' future or the next stage of their life after they leave your company, or if, something should befall them that, requires a benefit to be paid to their dependents. Again, like I said before, employees are really the most valuable asset of any business. And so Guardian Life is really partnering with companies to help them set their employees up with real powerful financial planning for the future, including pension plans that can help employees and their dependents after retirement or in the case of an untimely death. Of course, pensions have existed for a long time, and they've been really proven to be pretty useful financially for a lot of people. Now they can be actually unregistered or registered, and they can have a number of different advantages where, for example, if people reach retirement age, they will, generally experience a reduction in income. So a pension can make up for some of this loss of income in retirement. So it kind of has an income protection value. They can also provide, as I mentioned before, protection in the form of lump sum payments and payments to dependents in the event of an untimely death. And they can also provide a certain amount of tax relief, where if you're in Trinidad and Tobago, for example, you can get up to $50,000 a year if it's a registered pension plan. So it's really interesting because this was something that might have been seen before as something for, a different era, but it's starting to become, something that's increasingly more in demand, and could be a way that your organization could stand out. So check out Guardian Life of the Caribbean if you're interested in getting a pension plan and exploring this solution for your organization. For more information, log on to myguardiangroup.com. What differentiates one company from another? I know you kind of mentioned having a really poor experience, but how have you kind of gone about trying to seek differentiation in a business where, well, if I can transport you and you can transport the same thing and maybe the same way, how have you gone about kind of creating differentiation?
That's a great question. I'm glad you asked that. I recall, if I'm not mistaken, seeing on your website, I think you said modern technology is an amazing equalizer. Okay, so the industry was being run by 60-year-old men who they were doing the business since 1980 or 1990. So they were very, very, very old fashioned. So what we did is, after examining the business models and see what they're doing, see how they're treating the customers, they're treating it like rail truck. They don't care that the customer expectations raised over the years through Amazon and Uber. They don't care. They don't care if the driver is being put in a bad spot. They just know, hey, this has been working for us. We're making the money we're making. It's very competitive. And when we behave like this, people know they cannot compete with us because there's no rules. It's bare gunslingers. After we realized how poorly the salesmen were treating the customers, and the customers are the bosses, we decided to switch our tactic, and we get rid of the sales team, and we only had customer service people that were paid a salary to ensure the customer is satisfied the entire process. And we even put in many metrics to hold them accountable, including the customer service manager would call the customer a week after the vehicle delivered and ask them about their experience and so forth. We use that in our training process as well. So yes, it was very, very competitive. But what we used, as I said previously, was the technology to text the customer, to communicate with our team better. We use Ring Central, which helps something as simply as we merely improving our communication among the customer service team, what is the sales department or the dispatching department or the accounting department, simply improving the communication, the live communication. We use Ring Central. That helped us tremendously. Another thing is we communicate with the customer. Lots of people transporting vehicles, they don't want to talk to you on the phone for 20 minutes every minute of the day about their vehicle. So a lot of the older fellas, they prefer to call. But because we are open to technology, we would use any platform, WhatsApp, Ring Central, Facebook, IG, Twitter, to communicate with customers. Customers come through our Facebook page. They ask us for quote. We never speak to them. The ones that accept the prices, we email them confirmation. They pay using PayPal. We can process their credit cards remotely, and customers love that. They love that. So we use technology as a differentiator, and we improve the level of our use technology as well to improve the experience that our customers experience.
Yeah, I love that because I've I was actually in a recent podcast with a gentleman named Schofield Thomas. One of the things that he talked a lot about was his emphasis on customer experience and really thinking about customer journeys. So I love how you've kind of described that, because that is such an important way for people who listen to this or thinking about their own businesses, whether it's larger companies or starting companies or mid-sized companies. And one of the things they always say is really that focus on customer experience can be a powerful differentiator. So that's super valuable. So I'm interested in sort of higher order things this season around where people are trying to take their companies and why they do the things that they do. And I think one of the things that you had said earlier on was that you'd sort of started off with a focus on achieving that American dream and achieving wealth and so on. But then it sounded like at some point it started to shift to kind of almost like a higher order objective that was about more than necessarily making a dollar. So tell me a little bit about purpose as it applies to your company. What are you hoping to do and achieve, and what kind of impact are you hoping to have?
Great question. I'm fortunate to be in a position where throughout the pandemic, I paid all my bills, and it was tough. Things were tough. Our company got hit, our savings got hit, but we were in a position to adjust and make a lot of moves that we're not in a bad financial position. So grateful for that. So we want to take advantage of the fact that the chaos is out there. Before the pandemic, we were competing, and it was tough, but now it is tough, but there is lots of opportunity for a company who rode out the pandemic relatively well to take advantage going forward. We want to get our sales up $5-10 million. We did over $1 million before, which we're very proud of, but we believe with the chaos out there and freight companies who are in bad shape, or their employees and their teams are affected by the COVID, which is a horrible, horrible thing. And I wish everyone best of health. But the fact remains that it's a very chaotic time. And when me and my team keep our head on our shoulder, I believe we'll be able to accelerate some of the goals we had for the company and achieve them sooner, increasing sales, potentially going into other areas of freight besides automobile transportation. An example is here in St. Lucia, we've been meeting with BPOs, business processing offices in St. Lucia, as well as we rented an office exploring bringing some of the jobs to St. Lucia for the economic benefit of saving lots of money, one, and primarily. And in addition to that, a lot of the young adults here who I believe are in the same position I was 20 years ago, we'll be able to train them and give them some higher level skills and coaching and so forth and expertise that the ripple effect can be felt into the wider community here in St. Lucia. And of course, being able to provide jobs in a time that is, jobs were already tough since the financial crisis of '08, but put the pandemic on top of that and the heavy dependence of tourism throughout the Caribbean. If we could create one job, which we already did, and we confident based on what we see here, there'll be many more of those. We'll think that, hey, we're making a positive impact on the community and be able to give people some hope here.
Give me an example of something that, you've sort of had to change approach and strategy on within your business from when you first started. I'm always interested in the things that people do to kind of evolve over time. So you talked about some really, really cool things that you do, but what things did you sort of start off doing and they were working for you fine, but over time, as you listen to your customers, you looked at your operations, what are some of those examples of things that you had to change and tweak to create a better business performance?
There are so many things we had to change and tweak. I give you one example was the salesmen. Our salesmen they were making money. So just counting dollars, we had salesmen that are doing tens of thousands of dollars for us. But as I said, their relationship to the external company, the dispatchers and so forth, it was creating a very toxic culture. So we decided to get rid of the entire sales department, not just the sales, the bad apples, the entire sales department, because we wanted a better culture in the long term, not just the short-term financial, the monthly benefit, which believe me, Chike, that was definitely a painful decision.
I think that's kind of powerful, Jay, because a lot of the times, and I mean, you took a bold move there with, kind of making a big change in defense of culture. And I've certainly in my entrepreneurial experience and, with my co-founders at Caribbean Ideas, we've had to really kind of make a stand at some point. I remember myself being at some point kind of partway through the journey, pretty disillusioned with, the company that you built, right? And you're responsible for what your outcomes are. So I think really kind of committing to culture is an important thing that I think most leaders ultimately have to grapple with and so on. So it's really interesting that you've kind of had that experience too. You're from Guyana, you live in St. Lucia, you live in South Florida, so you kind of, moving around back and forth, which is interesting because you kind of straddle worlds, which is always something that I kind of, relate to. What are some of the opportunities that you see to help, Caribbean entrepreneurs or even, folks in larger companies to access these international markets, based on your experience kind of moving back and forth so seamlessly across both?
What opportunities to help the Caribbean entrepreneurs? What opportunities? That's a huge question. Can you give me an example what you mean by...
I think you started scratching at it a little bit earlier on when you were talking about kind of like jobs and so on. I think maybe, what I'm kind of curious about is one of the opportunity areas is always, potentially kind of, helping the Caribbean human resource to operate on that sort of like global scale and with global capability. So I'm curious how, through your work and through your business, you're trying to, I want to kind of hear a little bit more about how you're trying to do that and sort of develop, some of the human resources in St. Lucia to be able to set them up for tackling that global level.
Definitely. So one example is, of course, I'm sure you're aware of the volcano in St. Vincent. So my team and we have a campaign or a project where we're aiming to feed the 300 or as much of the 300 St. Vincians that are here in St. Lucia as refugees. We're aiming to assist the St. Lucians as well who may be in a bad position due to recent job losses brought on by the issues out of the tourist sector. And we're not just aiming to take money out of my pocket and feed these people. But since I'm a Rotarian from South Florida, and I've been a Rotarian for 4 or 5 years, and I've seen how not just the end result of, let's say, feeding the 300 people, but getting the people from the community themselves involved in feeding themselves. So what we've done, we recruited some interns. These are young adults who just graduated from high schools, or they have a high school named Hess High School here is pretty good, or they have a 2-year college that they complete business, a 2-year business certificate. So they know all of these things. Like the other day we've been talking about, like one of the guys been talking about creative destruction. He doesn't understand it deeply enough, and I don't blame him. He just have the theory in his brain, but to actually understand that, hey, although the incumbents in St. Lucia want everything to stay the same pre-pandemic, the world is moved on and the business models have moved on and updated, and technology have gone a decade. So he don't understand that if the incumbents don't move fast enough or not agile enough, it will be a problem. It'll be a destructive problem for job losses. They can't compete, overseas people, so forth. And he don't understand equally the opportunity that it creates for a young person like himself, because he never saw it before. So we're not just feeding the people. We are recruiting the young adults out of high school, 17, 18, or out of the 2-year university. And then we're reaching out to shareholders or stakeholders in the community, people from the Red Cross or Rotary, or people who are already doing their charity work in their own small way. So we have been putting together for the last several weeks, put together a wider team and talking to different sponsors. And we're looking forward to when this can come to fruition. But it's just one example of we training the interns and teaching them the skills of organizing and marketing.
You had a career where you'd have learned a lot of things and built a lot of skills, but then you jumped into to the very cold waters of starting a business. And there's a lot of learning and a lot of learning on the job that kind of has to happen with that. So how are some of the ways that you keep on top of new things and kind of sharpen this? So I mean, we joked around about Google before, but what entrepreneurs or people do you look to for inspiration? What are some of the resources or books that have kind of stood out that have helped you build capability?
Definitely. So with the books, I would not want to mention any specifically. Why? Because me looking back on my upbringing, using any one of the texts that most of us have access to, let's take the Bible, for example. You could find great philosophies in there that you could use about and apply it to any part of your life, especially business. One example is Jesus and not worrying about tomorrow and so forth. So there's many books, ones as accessible as the Bible, or many others that the Richest Man in Babylon, that's one, Richest Man in Babylon, or As a Man Thinketh. And there's many other books that we already know of that if we really get deep understanding of what we already know or were taught, get deep understanding of it and see how it applies and see if we're following what we understand about these different philosophies, I think it would make a tremendous positive impact. But regarding how did I, lots of learning on the job and some of the ways that I keep on top of my skills. I'm a member of Toastmaster. Now, this is a Toastmaster. You go, notwithstanding the many alms I'm saying, I would normally have to pay $5 for those alms. But Toastmaster International, it teaches you to give presentation for business seminars or a bank presentation or interviewing and so forth. I'm a member of Rotary International. At Rotary International, it's a big of a charity firm like Red Cross, and I work inside where they feed people in South Florida, or they assist people in Bahamas when had a hurricane, or they send things to the Philippines, or here in St. Lucia, they're doing many things to assist the kids get back to school. So being involved in that, it although it's a charity, it operates the same way as a Fortune 500 company like Home Depot. They plan 4 years ahead. They have meetings weekly. They have metrics. They keep people accountable. There's minutes. So it's a lot of organization. So I go to those organizations and I surround myself with awesome people like yourself, Chike. You worked at Microsoft and these terrific companies. So someone like yourself, I would want to have a beer with or play golf or something like that. And that is one of the ways that I grow and learn and develop my skills. And of course, I have many mentors that are specific to me and my needs that I handpicked, and I stick to their philosophy and I learned it and I continue to learn it. And when I meet them, I make sure I use them. I ask them questions about personal stuff or business or what have you. So that's how I've been keeping on top of my skills and growing and learning.
Yeah, that's always interesting. It's always a tricky thing for folks to kind of figure out. How have you sort of identified and kind of established relationships with new mentors that you didn't know before?
This is a personal. I understand you're asking me how I've done it, but before I say how I've done it, I want to say that it's going to be different for everyone, and no one should follow my way. My way is unique to me. So I played basketball. I can handle pressure. I can handle people talking to me rough or giving me harsh, quote unquote, harsh critique or telling me harsh truths. So I know myself very well. My uncle was in the military. I went to Royal Rangers. That's a church. In our church, when I grew up in Guyana, there was the scouts, but we call it Royal Rangers. So I was around a lot of military guys, a lot of boxers from gym and so forth. So when I was growing up, these are the guys I surround myself with. So they were able to assist me or mentor me in Guyana at 17, 18, 19, 20 or so forth. But to your question about the career and the business part, whilst I'm attending Rotary or whilst I'm a Toastmaster, I am not actively looking for a mentor. But if I'm building relationships, high quality relationships, and if Chike is 60 years old and he already accomplished what I want to do, if he owns Rolls Royces and boats and he and his family is living great, like, hey, Chike might have something valuable to impart and tell me. And it may not be me approaching you and saying, hey, can you be my mentor officially? No, it might be me asking you, hey, let's go and drink a beer if you're available, or let's go and work on a Rotary project or what have you.
You keep it organic, which is great. I think that's one of the things that's always like a little bit, challenging for people in terms of, how do I build and develop those relationships? And I think what's interesting about what you've said is that you just found ways to kind of keep it pretty natural and organic. But then, and I think you said something pretty important, which is I build, quality relationships and then sort of let it go from there.
Correct. I know myself well. That's first and foremost. And then I keep it organic, as you said, to the people that are already involved in passions that I'm associated with. Yeah.
Great. I'll ask you for kind of one last thought for the entrepreneurs, the innovators, the Caribbean folks out there who are, pursuing a dream or trying to get started. What would be one or two key thoughts that you'd pass on from your experience, if you could kind of go and talk to your younger self again that they could learn from?
I would say to be yourself. I would say 100% be yourself. What do I mean by that? I mean that Caribbean people, we are multicultural. We are Indians, we're Africans, we're mixed, we're many things in between. We're Chinese and so forth. And different parts of the world might receive your accent or your look with surprise. If you're Black and you go to Spain, my wife is 6 foot tall, beautiful Black woman. She went to Spain. They're astonished by she being Black and 6 foot. They rarely see people like that. Me speaking in America, people don't know if I'm from Africa or not. But if you are being yourself and your full authentic self, you would more likely attract people that are more genuinely and sincerely looking to build relationships with you. And that's an amazing thing to always remember, to be yourself. And the second one I would say is that these information that you're providing is tremendous. Your website is great. And the experience you bring from working at companies like Microsoft and E&Y and so forth, all the best companies in the world, is 100% top notch. They do not have better information or well-organized information, better organized information, in my opinion, They probably have equal but nothing better than this on the internet for us. That being the case, I would like emphasize that the more important thing is the intangibles, the grit, having chutzpah or having emotional bank account to really deal with the highs and lows of being in business. Right now, I'm refinancing my Florida house, which is over $500,000. I am closing on a real estate deal in St. Lucia. After this, I'm going to be on a virtual call for my 2-year-old son's birthday and so forth, so forth. So that's a lot of, I'm running a trucking company from Florida as well. So over the years, I've developed the emotional bank account and the grit. And now looking back, I would say that that's definitely be yourself and work on developing your emotional bank account.
I love that. Well, great. Well, Jay, I think that we couldn't have a better place to end off. Those are two powerful insights that I know will have, value for anyone who is listening. So I want to thank you for the time and for, coming and having a chat with us and being part of the UpTick podcast. And I wish you, great luck as you kind of go and move on to the next exciting phases of your journey.
Definitely, man. Thank you for having me. And it's definitely a pleasure.
I'd like to take a moment to thank Guardian Group for sponsoring today's episode. They've built their reputation around first-class insurance products, many of which are great for entrepreneurs and innovators who are out there. So it comes as no surprise that they have a cool product called Keyman Insurance in their product portfolio. You can check out this product and more at www.myguardiangroup.com. Make sure you know the next time an episode of UpTick drops by subscribing on your favorite podcast platform. And remember, share UpTick with a friend. Now, on behalf of Caribbean Ideas, this is Chike Farrell signing off. And remember, keep on ticking up.